When I told my mom my cousin had assaulted me, she pinched the bridge of her nose and said, "Honey, you're a woman now. These things happen." I didn't say a word. That was 10 months ago. This morning, she couldn't stop throwing up after a visit from CPS. Growing up, I didn't really have anything, or anyone. You see, my family was Hispanic and extremely broke, so all their time was either spent with their mouths on each other's hookahs, or working. So when I started getting bullied in high school, I tried to tell myself that I didn't care, that it wasn't worth dwelling on. But as you can imagine, my methods fell short. And by the time I turned 15, I not only had 0 friends, but the entire school knew I was a complete loser. So I finally caved. I called my cousin Daniel, bawling my eyes out. It was the kind of crying that makes your throat hurt and your head pound. I truly believed I was inconsolable. But somehow through the tears, he made me laugh. It was the first time in my life I had ever actually felt listened to, and I was hooked. We called practically every day that month, and it was mostly just me yapping while he listened. And because Daniel was 19, he actually gave me good advice. My grades started improving, I started caring about myself again, and I stopped eating in the bathroom stall and started sitting right in the open, even if it was all by myself. I had no idea how dark things were about to get, because that's when it was time to celebrate my 16th birthday. My mom insisted on inviting the entire family. I don't really care about birthdays, but I was excited to see Daniel and receive gifts. So when the day came, I actually made an effort, wore a cute little dress, did my makeup, even wore heels. And after answering 100, "Do you have a boyfriend yet?" questions, finally came the best part, the cake. It was a beautiful chocolate tres leches, and after I blew out the candles, Daniel came over and hugged me. When I saw him, I felt my face completely light up. Looking back, I should have known from the smell of alcohol on his breath that things were about to go south, but it started so subtly. "Daniel!" I yelled, and in response, he gave me a huge hug. I noticed it lasted longer than I thought it would, with his hands wrapped around my waist, but he was drunk as hell, so I just brushed it off. I was probably just being sensitive, right? But as the night progressed, I found myself mentally repeating that phrase over and over. Every time he found excuses to stand close enough that I could feel the heat of him against my arm, every time his fingers would brush my leg under the table and he'd pretend it was an accident. But then his excuses ran out. I had gone to grab a sweater from my bedroom. I didn't even have time to shut the door before he was there, pressing into the frame like he owned the place, like I owed him something for breathing the same air. He trapped me against the wall with his body, close enough I could smell the tobacco on his breath. I froze. Every survival instinct I had screamed not to move, not to fight, because if I made it worse, if I made a scene, somehow it would be my fault. But that's when his lips pressed against mine, and his hands traveled down my back. My survival instinct kicked in, and I screamed like a banshee, before kicking him right in the nards. As he stumbled backwards, I ran out and immediately dragged my mom outside to tell her what happened. I expected her to get mad, say that wasn't right, give me a hug, anything. But instead, she just sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. "Honey, you're a woman now. These things happen," she said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. My mouth filled with saliva as my stomach twisted. Soon, I was vomiting back out the tres leches into the toilet bowl, and that's how I spent my 16th birthday curled up on the cold bathroom floor with the door locked. I only came out when I heard Daniel's voice saying goodbye. By that point, it was 2 a.m., so I just went to sleep. Or tried to, anyway. The moment was replaying in my head so much that I could barely relax. I don't know why I brought it up to my mom again the next morning, but I did. And this time, she told me something even worse. Apparently, Daniel's sister was about to give birth, so he was going to move in with us soon to make room for the baby. And I guess she saw the shock on my face because that's when she reminded me that the best thing to do is let it go and not to hold a grudge. I nodded and agreed with her. Not because I wasn't infuriated, I was. Not because I wasn't completely distraught, I most certainly was. But the night it happened, as I lay awake in bed, I realized there was only one thing that would bring me joy: seeing him suffer. And by living with him, that was going to become 10 times easier. The day he moved in was one of the worst days of my life. I spent the entire morning locked in my room, trying not to throw up from anxiety. My mom kept knocking, telling me to come help clean up for Daniel's arrival, but I ignored her. Eventually, she gave up, and I heard her muttering something about teenagers and attitude problems. Around noon, I heard his voice in the living room. My stomach immediately twisted into knots. I pressed my ear against my bedroom door and listened to my parents welcoming him, telling him how great it was going to be having him here. My dad was saying something about man of the house, and I wanted to scream. Instead, I dug my nails into my palms until it hurt. I couldn't stay in my room forever, though. Eventually, I had to pee so bad that I had no choice but to venture out. I opened my door as quietly as possible and peeked down the hallway. No sign of Daniel. I tiptoed to the bathroom, did my business, and was about to sneak back when I heard his voice right behind me. "Hey, birthday girl." I nearly jumped out of my skin. Daniel was standing there with this smug smile like nothing had happened, like he hadn't assaulted me 3 days ago. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up completely. "Silent treatment, huh?" He laughed and stepped closer. "Don't be like that. We're roomies now." I backed away until I hit the wall. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Daniel just kept smiling, then reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I flinched so hard I banged my head against the wall. "Dinner's ready," he said, then turned and walked away like it was nothing. I stood there shaking for what felt like forever. Then I ran back to my room and locked the door again. My mom called me for dinner 3 times before giving up. I heard her tell my dad that I was being dramatic and needed to get over myself. I cried myself to sleep that night without eating anything. The next morning was a Monday, and I'd never been so happy to go to school. Even facing my bullies seemed better than being trapped in the apartment with Daniel. I got up super early, before anyone else was awake, and snuck out without breakfast. I spent the entire day at school actually paying attention in class, volunteering to answer questions, anything to keep my mind occupied. When the final bell rang, I felt sick knowing I had to go home. I walked as slowly as possible, even stopping at the public library for a while to use their computers. But eventually, I had to go back. When I got home, Daniel was sitting on our couch watching TV like he owned the place. My parents weren't home yet. They both worked late on Mondays. "There she is," Daniel said, patting the couch next to him. "Come watch with me." I have homework, I mumbled, not looking at him. I tried to hurry past to my room, but he grabbed my wrist. Don't be rude, he said, his voice suddenly harder. I'm trying to be nice here. I yanked my arm away. Don't touch me. Something flashed in his eyes then. Anger, maybe, or frustration. But he quickly covered it with another smile. Whatever you say, princess. I locked myself in my room again and pushed my desk chair under the doorknob for extra security. That night at dinner, I had no choice but to sit at the table with everyone. Daniel acted completely normal, telling my parents about his new job at some warehouse and how he was saving up for community college. They ate it up, telling him how proud they were. I just pushed food around my plate and tried to be invisible. After dinner, my mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. What's wrong with you? She whispered harshly. You're being so rude to Daniel. He's family. Nothing's wrong, I said, staring at the floor. I'm just tired. Well, snap out of it. He's doing us a favor by paying rent. The least you can do is be civil. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without screaming. That's when I realized no one was going to help me. If I wanted justice, I'd have to get it myself. The next day at school, I went to the library during lunch and started researching. I looked up stuff about assault and what happens to people who commit it. Most of what I found was depressing. So many cases where nothing happened to the perpetrator. But I also found stories about people who got revenge in different ways. Some went public, some gathered evidence, some found creative ways to make their abusers suffer. That's when I decided to start documenting everything. I created a password-protected document on my school Google account and began recording every interaction with Daniel, every creepy thing he said or did, with dates and times. I wasn't sure what I'd do with this information yet, but it felt good to have a purpose. I also started carrying my phone everywhere, with the voice memo app ready to record at a moment's notice. And I bought a cheap doorstopper with my lunch money to wedge under my bedroom door at night. Small steps, but they made me feel slightly less helpless. For the next week, I maintained this careful distance from Daniel. I'd leave early for school, come home late, and stay locked in my room whenever possible. But Daniel was getting frustrated with my avoidance tactics. He started accidentally bumping into me in the hallway, or walking in on me in the bathroom because he didn't know I was in there. Each time, I documented it in my file. Then came the night that changed everything. My parents were both working late shifts, and I was alone in the apartment with Daniel. I'd been hiding in my room with the door locked and the chair propped against it, trying to focus on homework. Around 9 p.m., I heard Daniel's footsteps in the hallway, then a knock on my door. Go away, I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. I ordered pizza, he said through the door. Come eat before it gets cold. I'm not hungry. Don't be like that. I'm trying to be nice here. Make peace. I didn't respond. After a minute, his footsteps retreated. I thought that was the end of it, but about 20 minutes later, I smelled smoke. I opened my door cautiously and saw smoke coming from the kitchen. I ran out to find Daniel standing there with a burning pan, looking helpless. I tried to heat up the pizza in the oven, he said, coughing. I guess I set the temperature too high. I pushed past him and turned off the oven, then grabbed a towel to fan away the smoke. Are you trying to burn the place down? I snapped. He shrugged. Just trying to be helpful. Not my fault this piece of crap oven doesn't work right. I rolled my eyes and started cleaning up the mess. That's when I realized his accident had forced me out of my room. I turned to go back, but Daniel was blocking the hallway. Since you're out here, might as well eat something, he said, gesturing to the pizza box on the counter. The pizza inside was untouched. He'd only put one slice in the oven. My stomach growled traitorously. I hadn't eaten dinner yet, and the pizza smelled good. Fine, I said, grabbing a slice and a paper towel, but I'm taking it to my room. Always hiding. Daniel sighed dramatically. What are you so afraid of? I stared at him in disbelief. Are you serious right now? He stepped closer, and I immediately stepped back. I was drunk on your birthday, he said, his voice suddenly softer. I made a mistake. Can't we move past it? A mistake? I repeated, my voice rising. You followed me to my room and assaulted me. Assaulted? He laughed. Don't be so dramatic. It was just a kiss. I felt rage building inside me like I'd never experienced before. You pinned me against a wall and put your hands all over me. I'm your cousin. I'm 16. Daniel's face changed then. The fake friendliness disappeared, replaced by something cold. Be careful throwing around accusations like that, he said quietly. No one's going to believe you anyway. Your mom already thinks you're making it up for attention. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the pizza. Get out of my way, I whispered. Or what? He challenged, stepping even closer. That's when I remembered my phone in my pocket. I'd been recording the whole conversation. I pulled it out and held it up. Or I'll show everyone this recording of you admitting what you did. Daniel's eyes widened, then narrowed. He lunged for my phone, but I was faster. I ducked under his arm and ran for the front door. I didn't have shoes on, or a jacket, but I didn't care. I just ran down the apartment stairs and out into the night, not stopping until I reached the convenience store 3 blocks away. I stood there in the fluorescent lights, breathing hard, checking my phone to make sure the recording had saved. It had. I played it back, hearing Daniel's voice clearly admitting he'd kissed me, seeing the timestamp. It wasn't a full confession, but it was something. Evidence. The cashier was giving me weird looks, probably because I was in pajama pants with no shoes, so I bought a cheap coffee and sat at the plastic table in the corner, trying to figure out what to do next. I couldn't go home, not with my parents still at work and Daniel there alone, but I had nowhere else to go. I ended up staying at that convenience store until almost midnight, when I knew my parents would be home. The walk back was cold and my feet hurt, but the fear of what waited at home was worse. When I finally got back to the apartment, my mom was waiting up, furious. Where have you been? She demanded. It's a school night. I couldn't tell her the truth, that I'd been hiding from Daniel, so I made up some story about going to the library to study and losing track of time. She didn't believe me, but she was too tired to argue. She just sent me to my room with a warning about being grounded if it happened again. I locked my door, wedged the chair under the knob, and listened. The apartment was quiet. Daniel's door was closed. I checked my phone again, making sure the recording was still there, then emailed it to myself as backup. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next day at school, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept thinking about the recording and what to do with it. I couldn't go to my parents. They'd already made it clear whose side they were on. The police? Would they even care? It was just a recording of a conversation, not the actual assault. Plus, I was terrified of what would happen if I reported it and nothing came of it. I'd still be stuck living with Daniel, but things would be even worse. During lunch, I was sitting alone as usual when this girl named Taylor sat down across from me. Taylor wasn't exactly a friend, but she wasn't one of my bullies either. We had biology together and sometimes partnered up for labs. "You okay?" she asked, unwrapping her sandwich. "You seem off lately." I was so surprised by the question that I almost told her everything right then and there. Instead, I just shrugged. "Family stuff." Taylor nodded like she understood. "My parents are divorcing right now. It's a whole thing." "That sucks," I said, meaning it. "Yeah." She took a bite of her sandwich, then said, "My mom made me go to this support group for teens with family problems. It's actually not terrible. You should come sometime." I almost laughed at the idea that a support group could help with my particular family problem, but I just thanked her and said I'd think about it. The conversation moved on to biology homework, but something about that brief moment of normalcy made me feel slightly less alone. After school, I decided to take a different approach with Daniel. Instead of avoiding him, I'd watch him, learn his patterns, find his weaknesses. Knowledge was power, right? When I got home, Daniel was playing video games in the living room. I forced myself to sit on the other end of the couch and pretend to do homework while secretly observing him. He seemed surprised by my presence, but didn't say anything about our confrontation the night before. Over the next few days, I kept this up. I noted when he left for work, usually around 10 a.m., when he came home, 6 p.m., and what he did in his free time, mostly gaming and texting. I noticed he always took his phone into the bathroom with him when he showered. I saw how he hid beer in his gym bag and sneaked it into his room. I watched how he charmed my parents with compliments and offers to help around the house. I also noticed something else. Daniel had a girlfriend. Her name was Megan, and she called him almost every night. I could hear him talking to her through the thin walls, telling her he missed her, making plans to see her on his days off. I wondered if she knew what kind of person she was dating. One day, about 2 weeks after Daniel moved in, I came home to find him passed out on the couch. Empty beer cans were hidden under the coffee table, and his phone was just sitting there on the armrest, unlocked. My parents wouldn't be home for hours. It was the perfect opportunity. I hesitated for only a second before grabbing his phone. My heart was pounding as I quickly scrolled through his messages. Most were boring. Work stuff, conversations with friends about video games, flirty texts with Megan. But then I found a conversation with someone named William that made my blood run cold. "William, how's life with the fam?" "Daniel, boring AF, except for my little cousin William. The one you told me about at the party?" "Daniel, yeah, she's been playing hard to get, but she'll come around." "William, dude, that's messed up. She's your cousin." "Daniel, step cousin, no blood. Besides, she wants it, just playing games." I felt sick reading it, but I forced myself to take screenshots of the entire conversation and email them to myself. Then I carefully put the phone back exactly where I found it and retreated to my room, my mind racing. The screenshots were even better evidence than my recording. Daniel was basically admitting to his friend that he was pursuing me, his underage cousin. And the step-cousin thing was a complete lie. We were definitely blood-related. I added the screenshots to my growing file of evidence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Daniel had said, that I would come around eventually. The idea that he was just waiting for another opportunity made me feel like I was living with a ticking bomb. I needed to do something soon. The next day was Saturday, and my parents were both working overtime shifts. I'd be alone with Daniel all day. The thought terrified me, but I also saw it as an opportunity. I decided to set a trap. I waited until Daniel was in the shower, then quickly went to his room. I knew exactly what I was looking for. The beer he kept hidden in his gym bag. I found 6 cans and took 3, hiding them in my room. Then I went to the kitchen and started making breakfast loudly, making sure he'd know I was up and around. When Daniel came out of the bathroom, he seemed surprised to see me cooking. "Making enough for 2?" he asked, leaning against the counter too close to me. "Sure," I said, forcing myself to sound casual. "I'm making eggs and toast. Want some?" He looked suspicious but nodded. I served up 2 plates and sat at the table across from him. I could feel his eyes on me as I ate, wondering what I was up to. "So," I said, trying to sound natural, "I've been thinking about what you said, about moving past what happened on my birthday." Daniel's eyebrows shot up. "Yeah?" I nodded, not looking at him directly. "I mean, we're stuck living together, right? Might as well try to get along." A slow smile spread across his face. Exactly what I've been saying. After breakfast, I suggested watching a movie. Daniel eagerly agreed, probably thinking his creepy plan was working. I put on some action movie neither of us really cared about and sat on the opposite end of the couch from him. Throughout the movie, I pretended to warm up to him, laughing at his jokes, gradually sitting closer. "Want a beer?" I asked during a slow part of the movie. "I know where my dad hides them." Daniel looked impressed. "Look at you, breaking rules." "Sure." I went to my room and grabbed the beers I'd taken from his stash, then brought them back. I opened one for him and pretended to take a sip of mine, though I wasn't actually drinking. Daniel, however, drank his quickly and accepted a second one. By the end of the movie, Daniel had finished all 3 beers on top of whatever he'd already had that morning. He was definitely tipsy, his words slightly slurred as he tried to put his arm around me during the credits. "You know," he said, leaning in too close, "you're really pretty when you're not being a beach." I forced a laugh, though my skin was crawling. "Thanks, I guess. We could have a lot of fun together if you just relax," he continued, his hand now on my knee. I stood up abruptly. "I need to use the bathroom." In the bathroom, I took out my phone and made sure the recording app was working. I took several deep breaths, reminding myself of the plan. I needed him to admit what he'd done, on record, with a timestamp. It was the only way. When I came back, Daniel had moved to my spot on the couch, so I'd have to sit right next to him. I did, my phone recording in my pocket. "Can I ask you something?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That night, on my birthday, why did you follow me to my room?" Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, but the alcohol made him looser than he would have been otherwise. "Because you looked hot in that dress," he said with a shrug. "And I thought you were into me." "Into you? You're my cousin." He waved his hand dismissively. "That's just a technicality. We're not really related." "Yes, we are," I insisted. "Our moms are sisters." "Whatever." He moved closer. "The point is, I know you felt something too. That's why you're being nice to me now, right?" I swallowed hard. "I'm being nice because I'm scared of you," I said honestly. "You assaulted me on my birthday, and now I'm trapped living with you." Daniel's face darkened. "I didn't assault you. I kissed you. You pinned me against a wall and put your hands all over me without my consent. That's assault." "You're exaggerating," he scoffed. "Besides, you liked it until you freaked out for no reason." I stood up, unable to stomach being near him any longer. I was terrified. "I'm 16, Daniel. Even if I wasn't your cousin, it would still be illegal." That seemed to penetrate his alcohol-fogged brain. He stood up too, suddenly looking more alert. "Are you recording this?" he demanded, reaching for my pocket. I jumped back, but not fast enough. Daniel grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise and yanked my phone from my pocket. When he saw the recording app running, his face contorted with rage. "You little beach," he hissed, squeezing my arm tighter. "What are you trying to do? Ruin my life. You're hurting me," I gasped, trying to pull away. "Let go." Instead of releasing me, Daniel shoved me hard. I stumbled backward and hit the coffee table, knocking it over and falling with it. Pain shot through my elbow as it hit the floor. Daniel stood over me, still holding my phone. "If you tell anyone about this, I'll make your life hell," he threatened. "I'll tell everyone you came onto me, that you're obsessed with me. Who do you think they'll believe? The honor student with a job, or the weird loner girl who has no friends?" I scrambled to my feet, holding my throbbing elbow. "Give me back my phone." Daniel laughed and held it above his head. "What are you going to do about it?" That's when I remembered the screenshots I'd emailed to myself from his phone, the evidence that wasn't on my phone. "I already have everything I need," I said, trying to sound confident despite my racing heart. "I have screenshots of your texts with William where you admit everything." The color drained from Daniel's face. "You're lying. Check your text history with William if you don't believe me. I sent myself screenshots while you were passed out yesterday." Daniel immediately started checking his phone, scrolling frantically through his messages. While he was distracted, I lunged for my phone, managing to knock it out of his hand. It clattered to the floor, and we both dove for it. I got there first, snatching it up and running for the door. I didn't stop running until I reached the park 3 blocks away. My elbow was throbbing, and I could feel bruises forming on my arm where Daniel had grabbed me, but I had my phone. The recording was still going, having captured everything: his admission about kissing me, his threat, the sound of him shoving me. It wasn't a full confession, but combined with the screenshots and my previous recording, it was building a case. I sat on a park bench, shaking with adrenaline and fear. I couldn't go home, not with Daniel there and my parents still at work, but I couldn't stay at the park forever either. I needed help, real help, from someone who would actually believe me. That's when I remembered what Taylor had said about the support group for teens with family problems. I didn't have the details, but I did have Taylor's number from a group project. With trembling fingers, I called her. "Hey," I said when she answered, my voice cracking. "Remember that support group you mentioned? Is it meeting today?" There was a pause. Then Taylor said, "Yeah, actually, in like an hour." "Why? Are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm not okay," I admitted, starting to cry. "I need help. Can you tell me where the group meets?" Taylor gave me the address. It was at a community center about a mile away, and offered to meet me there. I thanked her and hung up, then checked my phone battery. It was at 20%, but that should be enough to get me through the next few hours. I carefully saved the recording, emailed it to myself like the others, then started walking toward the community center. I had no idea if this support group would actually help me, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change, and soon. Either Daniel would have to go, or I would, and I was done running. I got to the community center about 15 minutes early. My elbow was throbbing like crazy, and I could already see purple bruises forming on my arm. I sat on a bench outside, trying to get my crap together before going in. No way was I walking into a room full of strangers with tears streaming down my face. Taylor showed up a few minutes later, looking concerned as hell when she saw me. "Oh my effing gosh, what happened to you?" she asked, staring at my arm. I just shook my head, not ready to explain everything yet. "It's a long story. Thanks for meeting me." She nodded, not pushing it. "The group's pretty chill. The counselor who runs it is cool. She doesn't force anyone to share if they don't want to." We went inside together. The community center was this dingy building with fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. About 10 teenagers were sitting in a circle of folding chairs. Most of them looked normal enough, though a few had that same haunted look I'd been seeing in my own mirror lately. The counselor was this 30-something woman named Susan with purple streaks in her hair. She smiled when we walked in and gestured to 2 empty chairs. I sat down, keeping my bruised arm partially hidden in my lap. "We have a new face today," Susan said once everyone settled. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" I mumbled my name, staring at the floor. Susan didn't push for more, just explained that this was a safe space for teens dealing with difficult family situations. People could share as much or as little as they wanted. A few kids talked about their parents' divorces or alcoholic dads or whatever. I half listened, still trying to figure out if coming here had been a mistake. Then this girl with short blue hair started talking about her stepdad who kept accidentally walking in on her in the bathroom. Something about the way she described it, how everyone told her she was overreacting, how her mom didn't believe her, hit way too close to home. Before I knew what was happening, I was crying again. Not quiet tears either, but full-on ugly sobbing that made everyone stare at me. Susan quickly handed me a box of tissues. "Would you like to share what's going on?" she asked gently. And suddenly, I did. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, who might actually believe me. So I started talking. I told them about Daniel, about what happened at my birthday party, about him moving in, about the recording and screenshots, about what had happened that morning. I showed them the bruises on my arm. I even played a short clip from the recording where Daniel admitted to kissing me. When I finished, the room was dead silent. Then Susan asked, "Have you told your parents about this?" "My mom knows. She told me to get over it because these things happen when you're a woman." Several people in the circle made disgusted noises. The blue-haired girl muttered, "That's effed up," under her breath. Susan's face got really serious. "What you're describing is intimate assault and now physical assault as well. As a mandated reporter, I'm required to report this to the authorities." My stomach dropped. "No, please don't. My parents will kill me." "I understand you're scared," Susan said, "but you're in danger living with this person, and you're a minor. This isn't something you should have to handle alone." I started panicking. "But what if they don't believe me? What if they send me back home and things get worse?" "That's why the recordings and screenshots are so important," Susan explained. "They're evidence. And those bruises on your arm are fresh evidence too." She asked if I'd be willing to talk to a police officer and a social worker. I was terrified but also desperate, so I eventually agreed. Susan stepped out to make some calls while Taylor sat with me. The blue-haired girl, whose name was Jamie, came over too. "My mom didn't believe me either," Jamie said quietly, "but things got better after I told someone at school. I'm staying with my aunt now." That gave me a tiny spark of hope. Maybe there was a way out of this nightmare. About 30 minutes later, a female police officer named Officer Mary arrived with a social worker named Sarah. They took me to a private room where I showed them all my evidence. The recordings, the screenshots, the bruises. I answered what felt like a million questions. When was the first incident? Had there been other physical contact? Did I feel safe going home? To that last question, I finally admitted the truth. "No. I'm scared of what he'll do when he finds out I came here." Sarah, the social worker, explained they'd need to investigate, which meant talking to my parents and Daniel. I nearly threw up at the thought, but she also said I wouldn't have to go home tonight if I didn't feel safe. They could arrange emergency placement while they sorted everything out. Emergency placement? Like foster care? I asked, my voice shaking. Possibly, or with another relative if there's someone suitable, Sarah explained. I couldn't think of any relatives who'd take me in. Most of my family was either broke, lived too far away, or would take Daniel's side. I felt trapped all over again. That's when Taylor, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. She could stay with us. My mom wouldn't mind. I stared at her in shock. We weren't even really friends, just biology partners who occasionally talked. But the way she said it, like it was the most obvious solution in the world, made me want to hug her. Sarah said they'd need to check with Taylor's mom first, make sure the home was suitable, all that bureaucratic stuff. Officer Mary said she'd be going to my apartment to speak with Daniel and my parents. The thought of that confrontation happening without me there was both terrifying and relieving. While Sarah called Taylor's mom, Officer Mary took photos of my bruises and made copies of all my evidence. She told me I'd been smart to document everything. A lot of these cases come down to he said, she said, she explained. Having recordings and screenshots makes a huge difference. Sarah came back and said Taylor's mom had agreed to let me stay temporarily. They'd need to do a home check first, but it looked promising. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But then reality hit me. I had nothing with me. No clothes, no toothbrush, nothing. Sarah said they could take me to get my essential items, but Officer Mary would need to come along to make sure it was safe. The drive back to my apartment was the longest 10 minutes of my life. I sat in the back of Officer Mary's police car, watching familiar streets pass by and wondering if my life would ever be normal again. When we pulled up, I saw my parents' car in the parking lot. They must have come home early. My hands started shaking so bad I could barely unbuckle my seatbelt. Officer Mary went in first, with Sarah and me following behind. The moment we stepped through the door, I knew all hell had broken loose. My mom was crying at the kitchen table. My dad was pacing and yelling at Daniel, who was sitting on the couch looking pale. Everyone froze when they saw the police officer. Then my mom spotted me and jumped up. "Where have you been?" she demanded, then noticed Sarah standing beside me. "Who is this? What's going on?" Officer Mary took control of the situation, explaining who she was and why she was there. My dad's face went from angry to confused to horrified as she talked about the allegations and evidence. Daniel stood up, looking panicked. "She's lying. She's been obsessed with me, making up stories. We have recordings," Officer Mary cut him off, "and photographs of the bruises on her arm from this morning." My mom turned to me, her eyes wide. "You went to the police? About family?" That's when I lost it. "Yes, because you wouldn't listen. He assaulted me on my birthday and you told me to get over it. He's been terrorizing me for weeks and you've done nothing." My dad looked like someone had punched him in the gut. "Is this true?" he asked my mom. "You knew about this?" My mom started stammering about how I was exaggerating, how Daniel was family, how these misunderstandings happen. With each word, my dad's face got darker. "Get out," he suddenly said to Daniel. Daniel tried to argue, but my dad cut him off. "Get out of my house now." I'd never seen my dad that angry before. Daniel grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Officer Mary followed him, saying she still needed to take his statement. The next few hours were a blur. Sarah explained to my parents that I'd be staying elsewhere tonight while the investigation continued. My dad kept asking why I hadn't told him what was happening. My mom alternated between crying and trying to convince everyone this was all a big misunderstanding. I went to my room to pack some clothes and stuff, with Sarah coming along. As I grabbed things, I noticed my mom standing in the doorway, watching me with this lost expression. "I didn't know it was that bad," she said quietly. "I thought it was just, I don't know what I thought. I couldn't even look at her. You told me to get over it, that these things happen to women. I was wrong," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Part of me wanted to forgive her right then, but a bigger part was still too hurt and angry. I just kept packing. That night I stayed at Taylor's house. Her mom was super nice, making up the couch for me with clean sheets, and even lending me a pair of pajamas that were way too big. Taylor and I stayed up late talking, not just about Daniel, but about school and music and normal teenage stuff. It felt surreal to be having a regular conversation after everything that had happened. The next few weeks were a roller coaster. I gave an official statement at the police station. Daniel was charged with SA of a minor and physical assault. My parents were investigated by Child Protective Services. I started seeing a therapist twice a week. I stayed with Taylor for almost 2 weeks before moving back home. By then, Daniel was long gone. My dad had made sure of that. My mom was different too, quieter, more careful around me, like she was walking on eggshells. She started coming to therapy with me sometimes, trying to understand how badly she'd failed me. The case against Daniel moved slowly through the legal system. I had to tell my story over and over to different people, detectives, prosecutors, victim advocates. It was exhausting, but each time it got a little easier. The evidence I'd collected made a huge difference. Without it, it really would have been my word against his. School was weird too. Somehow, rumors about what happened got out, but instead of making things worse, it actually stopped a lot of the bullying. People looked at me differently, not with pity exactly, but with a kind of respect. Like I wasn't just a poor Hispanic girl with no friends anymore, but someone who had stood up for herself. Taylor introduced me to her friend group, and gradually, I started having actual friends. Real ones who texted me just to check in and saved me seats at lunch. Jamie from the support group became a friend too. We had different experiences, but understood each other in a way most people couldn't. 6 months later, Daniel took a plea deal rather than go to trial. He got probation and had to register as an intimacy offender. Part of me was angry he didn't get jail time, but mostly I was just relieved it was over, and that he was officially labeled as what he was, a predator. My relationship with my parents is still complicated. My dad and I are closer now. He's made real efforts to be more present, even cutting back his work hours. My mom, that's harder. She's trying, but I haven't fully forgiven her yet. Maybe someday. The nightmares haven't completely stopped. I still flinch sometimes when people touch me unexpectedly, but I'm not that terrified girl hiding in her bedroom anymore. I found my voice and I'm never going to be silent again.